Hi, I'm DC Hillier, creator of MCM Daily on Instagram and on Facebook, and co-host of the Perspectiva podcast. And you're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. One of the most admired mid-century architects is John Lautner, a student and employee of Frank Lloyd Wright. Before he died in 1994, Lautner created some of the most wildly innovative and inspiring houses in the world, creating shapes and spaces that were light years in the future ahead of conventional architecture. No one, except perhaps Zaha Hadid, has even come close to his amazing and creative designs. With us on today's show is his daughter and head of the John Lautner Foundation, Judith Lautner. And here's your host, George Smart.
Hey, thanks, Tom. It's always a pleasure to do a show about John Lautner, and we've had a lot of them. We spoke to Lautner adventurers Tico Sarist and Jan Rickard Kiekert, who turned their trips to see every Lautner house into a book, Lautner A to Z. We've spoken with Lautner associates, architect Helene Arouette and builder Robin Poirier. We've talked with many Lautner owners, including Kelly Lynch and Trina Turk. Lautner's reputation only grows with each passing year. When he worked for Frank Lloyd Wright, he oversaw the Johnson Wax Building in Wisconsin and the Sturgis and Oboler houses, among many other projects. Lautner did not receive his architectural license until 1952. He considered his clients either rich bastards or poor geniuses, according to stepdaughter Elizabeth Honnold Harris. Lautner's early innovative designs, both residential and commercial, were ridiculed by fellow architects and architecture critics, and his reputation suffered, despite the fact that his designs and his innovation was as good as anyone. Following some lean years, he rose again in the 1960s with the Chemisphere House in L.A. and poured concrete houses like the Elrod Residence in Palm Springs and the Bob Hope House in Palm Springs. These were wildly popular houses, progressively larger over the years, with expansive glass walls and jaw-dropping concrete shapes. In a moment, we'll talk with his daughter, Judith. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by modernist realtor Angela Roll.
In Episode 5, Revenge of the McMansions, it is a dark time for modernist rebels. Bulldozer ships from the Empire continue to attack modernist houses across the galaxy and turn them into massive Italianate villas. Evading the Empire's fleet, a group of freedom fighters led by Princess Angela Roll establish a base in Palm Springs, just in time for happy hour at Melvin's, happily still going after 300 years. She's formed an uneasy alliance with the Galactic Planning and Zoning Board to fight Brad Vader, Darth's cousin, who went into real estate. Brad Vader is obsessed with finding the rebel princess whose Instagram account, yes, it's still a thing after 300 years, has 10,000 times as many followers as he does. At the same time, on planet Calatrava, where the new spaceport is 15 years late and $145 trillion over budget, a secret cabal of rogue archivists prepares a small ship to go to the edge of the galaxy. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Princess Angela's great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother, modernist realtor Angela Roll, uses the force of real estate experience and architectural training to defend modernism. Plus, she knows how to buy or sell a house using Bitcoin. Reach Angela Roll at angelaroll.com, that's ROEHL, or call 919-995-0550, or just send a hologram. Judith Lautner was born in Los Angeles to architect John Lautner and his wife Mary. Her parents divorced when she was 3, and Judith grew up as the middle child of 7 kids in Marquette, Michigan. Back in the day, she took piano lessons and always carried around her trusty Minolta camera. Judith left Marquette at the age of 20 to attend Cal State University, where she majored in mathematics, then worked as a city planner, making lots of reports until she quit to focus on her own writing. Now, in Henderson, Nevada, she writes, plays video games like Animal Crossing and The Sims, and is head of the John Lautner Foundation. She appeared in the documentary Infinite Space, The Architecture of John Lautner. Welcome, Judith.
Thank you.
So, Judith, before we get started, I understand you're a huge cat photo fan.
Well, you could say that.
So what's this passion all about?
The first cat that I remember was a little kitten that my sister Carol found when I was a child. The kitten was about 3 weeks old and had been rescued when its mother had been killed by a car. And she brought that cat home, and we named it Tiger. And Tiger immediately took to our dog, Sarah, who is an Irish wolfhound. And as you might imagine, the cat actually ran the show.
Really?
That huge dog, huge dog had no effect on her.
Wow.
Tiger was a great cat, but that was the first one, and there have been many since.
And thousands of photos?
I feel a little embarrassed that I have taken many more photos of cats than I have of my children or my grandchildren. And I do love my children and grandchildren.
Well, so you're the one taking all the cat pictures.
Yeah.
They are kind of cute.
Yes.
What is this strange relationship, Judith, between cats and brutalist architecture? I mean, there's even a website that they inject cats into concrete buildings.
I think they fit there, but I personally don't like, and I hope you're not implying that my father's work was brutalist, because others have done so, and I don't agree.
Okay. Well, we won't imply that then.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, concrete is cats just make all kinds of buildings more accessible, I think. Just see them there, it's comfortable, you can move in.
And they're soft and furry, unlike brutalist concrete.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, you didn't get to really know your father until you were an adult, right?
That's true. Although we did visit, he visited in Michigan during the summer sometimes. He would come for a week or two just to visit with us. But I don't remember how many years he did that, actually. But that was all we saw of him until I grew up.
And you had 6 brothers and sisters?
Yes.
That's a lot. I only thought you had 3.
Well, I only had 3 that were Lautners.
Okay.
But the other 3 are also children of an architect, a different architect.
Okay. Which architect was that?
His name was Robert DeRoche.
So your mother remarried?
Yes.
Okay. That's quite a big family.
Yes, it was, and probably about as chaotic as you might imagine it could be.
And all of this was wrapped around a place called Deer Track, which was a house that Frank Lloyd Wright designed for your grandmother, Abby Roberts.
Well, that's not quite the thing. The story is actually that my grandmother built a little village of 12 cabins around a lake that she also built. And she rented those. It was like a resort. And they were rented in the summer. That's how they were designed. And she then had Frank Lloyd Wright build her that house that was at the entrance to Deer Track.
Okay, so Deer Track was like guest cottages for vacationers?
Yes, it really was.
Okay.
It was, I guess you could call them vacation rentals in today's terminology. But people would rent them in the summer, and they would go swimming there. And my mother had a archery range constructed in the woods there, because the whole site is over 100 acres and mostly woods. The cabins take up a very small part of it.
Is that still there?
The village?
Yes.
Yes, it is there, although when my sister took it over, my sister Carol, after my grandmother died, she and her husband purchased it, and they ran it year-round for rentals. And that became, a bit of a strain, because they was not built for the winters there. So she was constantly having to go in and insulate and fix things, and it took over her life, pretty much.
Is the house?
And the house is still there, too, yes. But, the house is its own story. In fact, I'm sure you know that my grandmother and Frank Lloyd Wright did not get along.
We've heard that.
We've heard that, and what I've heard is that he described her as one of 2 women that he would like to have tied to a carriage and horsewhip, something of that sort. Can't remember the exact terms.
That would get his endorsements dropped these days.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My mother said that, I think it was my mother who told me this, that my grandmother believed she knew all she needed to know about architecture. And she didn't need to hear it from Frank Lloyd Wright. But because she was paying the way for her daughter and son-in-law to go to Taliesin, she felt that she had some kind of rights here and she should get a house from this man. And she was the one who was responsible for bringing Broadacre City into Marquette as an exhibit many years ago. And she chose one of those houses. And Wright said that's not appropriate for a hillside in Marquette. It wasn't designed for this kind of climate or this location. It's not appropriate, but she just insisted. And so he finally gave in. And then during the construction, she decided she was to change some things. Among other things, she changed the dining room to put it at a totally awkward angle. And she changed so many things that Wright did not want to put his name on it at all when it was done.
So they were not fans of each other?
Not in the least.
But I assume this is where your dad got exposure to Wright and wanted to go to Taliesin to study.
No, actually, he was already there.
Oh.
And he was supervising the construction. It was his first job, supervising construction, and it was on his mother-in-law's building. That's not really a great recipe, frankly.
No.
I read the letters that he wrote to my grandmother and to Wright and to others at this time. And, he wasn't a great writer, and that was the prize that he wrote at all, but he did. And it revealed something about him that I never knew, and that's that he did have some time of insecurity. That when I knew him as an adult, he seemed to be totally sure of himself. And he knew he was going, he knew he had the stuff, and it was just a matter of getting people to listen, But back then, he was really insecure, and it really showed in those letters. He had quite a struggle there. I mean, his first project, and he was dealing with this woman who would not take no for an answer, who would not listen to others. It was very difficult. I mean, she was a remarkable woman, but when she had her mind set on things, there was no changing it.
In the history of your dad, your mom is often overlooked, even though she was an architect and also studied under Frank Lloyd Wright. What was she like?
She did not become an architect. In fact, she told me that my father said to her, there's only going to be one architect in this family. They did both go to Taliesin. They both were apprentices, but she never took her own place on the boards and became an architect. What she liked to do was she did these drawings using T-squares and rulers and colored pencils, and she did these abstract drawings. And that was what she essentially came away from, other than her stories about working in that kitchen, which she did not enjoy.
The kitchen at Taliesin?
Yes. Everybody was supposed to be doing everything, but she, most of the time, was in the kitchen.
Did she channel any of that training into some other pursuit?
Not really, not that training, no, I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
She mostly pursued photography.
Oh, there you go. Was she photographing nature or buildings or what?
Well, interestingly, she liked to photograph things that moved. And so her first big splash, I think, came when she was photographing ski jumpers in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And when the training camp for the Olympics for ski jumping was in the Upper Peninsula, she was there, and she became essentially kind of a mascot of the team. She was there every day photographing them, in Iron Mountain in particular, as they did their jumps, their practice jumps. And then I think they were headed for Innsbruck that year for the Winter Olympics.
In Austria, yeah.
Yeah,
so
but she never became official anything, but many of her pictures went out by AP all over the world because nobody else was taking them.
So this would have been in the 40s, 50s?
Oh, no, it would be in I'm thinking it was either late 50s or 60s, late
right.
50s, I think.
Whenever there was a Winter Olympics.
I guess you could look it up.
Yeah.
We could probably look it up. Yeah.
Yep. 1964.
Yeah.
That's when the
Okay, 64.
Olympics. Yep.
Okay,
Thank you, Tom. Sure, excellent.
And I took up photography with her when I was about 12. And that's when she gave me that Minolta. And so I came with her a lot of the times, but not all the time by any means. When she did this, so I was there with her and saw what she was doing.
Judith, it must have been hard because your dad was away for so much of the time. But at one point, he bailed you out of jail?
Oh?
That is true. You definitely have been digging into my journals. Yeah, this is an interesting thing. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I had a group of friends. There were 4 of us. They were all music students. Even though I got my degree in math, I spent my time in the music building. And we would all hang out at my house and just get stoned, listen to any number of things, from In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida to Beethoven's symphonies, and we would just lie around and listen. But one of my close friends at the time, one of this group, liked to experiment, and she's the one who got us started getting marijuana. And one time we had a friend who was dealing. We went to his house in Hollywood to pick up a lid, which was an ounce, which was $25, as I recall.
Oh, yeah, those were the days.
Yeah, those were the days. And we were driving my beat-up black Volkswagen Bug, so we were targets. It was Friday night, and we were heading back on the Hollywood freeway when we got pulled over. And I became paranoid. Said, oh, my God, we have this in the car. What are we going to do? And I did the stupidest thing ever. When I got out of the car, we pulled over, into some lot. When I got out of the car, I just slid the marijuana out of the car in the hopes that it would go under the car. It was right there in front of me.
Yeah.
So they arrested us for possession. At that time, it was a felony.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and we spent one night in jail.
What was the pretext for them to stop the car? Were you smoking and smoke coming out the window?
No, nothing like that. It was a headlight. Well, no, it was the license plate light was out. That was an excuse they used a lot at the time.
That's always how they get you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, I didn't know what they were stopping us for. I thought they knew something,
Right.
But
because marijuana doesn't make you paranoid or anything.
Oh, no, nothing like that. So we did spend a night in, what's the name of that women's prison?
I don't know, never been there.
It's the name of a woman, anyway. I can't think of the name of it. And we called our friend, I think it was the friend who sold us the weed, as a matter of fact, and asked him if he could possibly get the bail and don't tell our parents, We didn't want anybody to know. But he called them. He called my father called my mother.
Wait a second. I'm your daughter's weed dealer? Can you go down and bail her out?
Yeah. Well, friends are friends,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, he was a friend.
So your dad had to come down.
My dad bailed me out, yeah.
Wow.
And he was he didn't know too much about the scene, you might say. He didn't know that this was a very casual thing, that marijuana was not very strong, not like it is today anyway. And that it was my use of it was totally casual. I had no problem. He was worried that I was possibly, what's the word again? Addicted?
Yeah.
And, and he was really frantic about this.
Yeah, you were headed for Skid Row. Yeah, in his eyes.
Yeah, exactly. And he had no idea.
Well, that's what dads do.
Yep.
Well,
they worry.
It was interesting. He did find me a lawyer. We both got our own separate lawyers. And we got off because we should not have been stopped on a Friday night for a license plate light.
Oh.
That we ended up in jail. We could have been there for the whole weekend for a minor infraction. That was what the judge's ruling was, so they never even got to the marijuana is what it came to.
Wow.
So that was good. Nothing on the record. Yeah.
When did you start taking interest in your dad's architecture and preserving his legacy?
Of course, he always let us know about it when things got into magazines and so on. And my interest when I was younger was not great. I'd like the Life magazine cover with the Alaskan house, the Harpel.
The Harpel, yeah.
That was just stunning to me. I just thought that was the most amazing building I'd ever seen. That may have been it. That may really have been when it first really triggered something in me. But it really became just gradual, built up, grew on me. And when I first moved out to Los Angeles, I was not close to my father. I honestly didn't even want to see him that much. I moved out with my sister Mary, and we lived together. Gradually, I started going over to his house to have dinner with him and with his wife, with Elizabeth. And Elizabeth won me over. It didn't take her very long, actually, because she, in spite of all the bad press I'd gotten from my mother and grandmother, I liked her. You know, I grew up with all of this stuff. She was the other woman and all of that. But I liked her, and we became closer possibly than I was to my own mother, actually. So it was during this time that I would get to know both Elizabeth and my father in a much different way. There came a time when I had been in school for a while, and I wasn't really getting to my graduation point. When I was having dinner with Elizabeth and my father, and I was moaning about how I didn't have any place to work at the time, and my father was moaning about how he couldn't get good help, and my stepmother said, well, look, why don't you two get together? And so that was when I started to work for him part-time.
And what did you do?
I was mostly an organizer. I organized photographs, organized materials, tried to organize files and things, but
creative people really need someone to help keep them organized. Those usually don't go hand in hand.
They do. But unfortunately, I also did some drawing, and I was okay at it, but it wasn't what I really wanted to pursue because I figured something out rather early on. When I was working on one of his houses, he just wanted me to do some work in a kitchen or something like that. It was just lay out some kind of kitchen in this room. And as I was doing it, I was worried about how much this or that was going to cost because of how you would have to build this or that, you know? And I realized then that I did not have that kind of creative mind, not that I wouldn't be able to say, to get past the worries of the practicalities. And my father could, as you might imagine.
Well, if your client has a big enough budget, right, you can do most anything.
Well, even when he didn't have a great budget, he would find ways. He thought this is the way it should be, and he would let them know this is the way it should be. And then if he had to make compromises, he didn't fuss about it. He was fine with him. He just wanted to get the job done. But he was creative enough to find solutions at whatever budget, which is great. I just felt like he could really visualize something, see it, and I got stuck in the little sticks and stones and so on. I couldn't get there.
Did you start up the foundation while he was still alive?
Oh, no. My sister started it up after he died. He had told her, Carol, that he wanted the foundation, and she determined that she was going to make it happen. So she made it happen, and then she invited me to join them. So I said, I don't want to be going to meetings all the time. I still don't. So I'd be happy to be on the board of advisors, and I'd like to work on this or that, you know. So I did the website, for example, did some small things, and tried to organize some things again. I'm not that great an organizer, but you need somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Over the years, Carol and I would go meet Carol in Los Angeles when she was going to meetings, and we would go to meetings together, and we would talk, and we got to know each other in a way that I had never known her when we were young, which was great. I'm so grateful for that time.
Judith, tell me about what the foundation does now to preserve your dad's legacy.
Our primary interest is in getting all of the Lautner homes in some form of preservation that is listed on the National Register or especially on the local registers whenever it's possible and whenever they are eligible, because that's their best chance for survival, we feel. We also always offer our services to people who want to change things in their homes. They rarely take us up on that, but we do offer consultation services in case we can provide the information they need to do the job right.
Do you have access to the drawings and the plans?
Yes, we do. Everybody does. They are housed at the Getty Museum, the Getty Institute, yeah.
I guess Priscilla Presley didn't call you when she badly renovated her house.
No, not at all. That's very common, unfortunately.
Although that's probably the worst example of a Lautner renovation, from what I can hear.
That's very possible, yes. I've never even been in that house. I don't think it would be worth it.
I know that two guys from the Netherlands, Jan
Yeah.
Ricard Kiekert and Tico Sarist, you know quite well because more than anyone, they've been to, I think, every single house your dad designed that got built.
Every building that he had anything to do with that they could find, they've been to.
And it took them years.
It did.
And many trips from the Netherlands to the U.S. and
Yeah,
Mexico and Alaska,
Yep.
all of those places.
They've been far more places than I have, that's for sure.
Their book, Lautner A to Z, is really wonderful.
I agree.
One question I had, your dad is often cited as the chief architect for the 1984 LA Summer Olympics, but we could never find any verification of that. Is that true?
I have never actually, no, I don't think he was.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
Was he involved at all?
Not that I know of. I think I would know.
He was, hang on a second here, he was part of a committee with Claire Falkenstein, Frank Gehry, Ray Cappy, were all jurors in an international competition for a gateway arch, which
that might have been.
which was headed by Palm Springs architect William Kreisel, who was competition coordinator for the LA chapter of the AIA. Little trivia there for you.
And when was that?
This was 82, 83, roughly.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I wasn't working for him at the time, and I wasn't in LA either, so there's a lot of that I wasn't personally aware of or I wasn't there for.
We found a newspaper article listing that one. When your father's second wife, Elizabeth, died, your dad remarried, I think someone named Francesca?
That's right.
Is she still around?
No, she died too, not quite a few years ago.
Okay.
She was his housekeeper.
Oh, okay.
And it's Francisca. It's not the ch sound.
Oh, Francisca. Okay.
Yeah. She came from Mexico.
Was she at all related to the house that your dad did in Mexico for the Arangos?
Oh, no.
Okay. Because that's on my bucket list. I hope one day to possibly visit that place. It looks so spectacular in the videos.
It is, and it's tricky to get in because they are super cautious.
Well, I bet they are.
It's a private residence?
Yes.
It is, and they use it mainly for weekends, special times. Most of the time they live in Mexico City.
What have you found in your father's archive that has surprised you or shifted your perspective on his work?
There was something that I noticed at one point. He was hired by a couple in Ohio who wanted to build a house there when I was still working for him. And one thing at the time he learned about was the horseshoe crab, that the eyes of the horseshoe crab had a way of bringing light in from all directions. There's something about the way this very ancient animal was designed, was built, that intrigued him. And he used the form of the horseshoe crab as his big idea for that house, actually. This was one that never got built. But it was interesting to me. It was because of the feature of the eye that he chose that shape. But other than that, the shape didn't really have anything to do with it, other than the eye. It didn't have anything to do with the feature of bringing light in, which is what he was trying to do in Ohio, being a state where it can get very cold. The thing that struck me about this was that sometimes he made connections that didn't make sense.
Yeah. How did this go over with the couple who commissioned him to make their house?
Well, I think they liked it well enough, from what I understand, but they never did build it. I don't know if it was a financial or another reason, actually.
I think this was the Curtis residence, Hunting Valley,
That's right,
Ohio.
Yeah.
We spoke a number of years ago with Warren Lawson, who was working on the project at the time, and the main architect was someone named Kay Henderson.
Oh, right. I remember them both, yes.
Yep. Okay, cool. Tell me about the straw hat your dad got for you.
Oh, you've been reading my Facebook post.
I have.
Then, when I was a child, I think about 10, I used to write and ask for certain things for Christmas from my father. And this year, those ballerina dolls were very popular, and I wanted one that had toes, those feet that would move up and down that you could move. and go on toe shoes. And so I requested that. And I really, really wanted it. When the package arrived in the mail, I shook it, and it had this kind of shuffly sound in it. It sounded like could have been a tutu. And I was hopeful.
Oh.
But when I opened it, it was a straw hat.
Okay.
So
how'd that go over?
This was really something of a theme, actually, that I would ask for things, and he would get me something that was sort of like that, or cheaper than that, or some other thing entirely.
How did he explain his way out of that one?
Well, I never did confront him about it or anything.
Okay.
He thought it was a great gift because he'd gotten it in some other country.
Okay.
The exotic nature of it.
Right. Yeah. Good. I was too young to appreciate that aspect, needless to say. But later, when I was in college and I was in Los Angeles, I was studying music, and I wanted the full collection of the Beethoven sonatas as edited by Arthur Schnabel. And they were expensive, and I was a student. So I asked him, could you get this for me? And it needs to be the one by Arthur Schnabel, I said, not any other edition.
No.
And he said he was really huffy. Well, I would never get another edition.
Oh.
I think you found the way to get the right gift.
Yeah, by being very specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did get that, and I still have that.
One of the houses that is amazing to most people once they realize that it's there is the house that he designed for Bob Hope in Palm Springs, which has a really rocky history. Can you tell us about that?
I can't tell you the full story, as I was not a person who worked on the house itself, but he mostly worked with Dolores Hope on the details, and he got along with her very well, and he thought that actually the project was going well. But then Bob would step in and say, no, to this, and that, and he'd have to go back to the drawing board. And they did not have a very great relationship, needless to say. One time I went with him to Palm Springs, and I think the reason was that he had broken his arm at that time, and I drove the car. And so I actually met Bob Hope, but he didn't even acknowledge me. I wasn't important. I didn't matter, so he didn't even look at me or acknowledge me.
Weird.
Which really gave me a sense of what the guy was,
Yeah.
Now, why this house is significant for many reasons, but one of them is that Bob Hope was associated with a lot of charitable functions, including a golf tournament in his name.
Right, yes.
And he wanted to create a space, I understand, that would seat 500 for dinner. Which is how big this house is.
Yep. The first time that I went in there, and it was many years after my father's death and after Bob Hope's death, I looked and I thought my father should have been able to design an airport, that he would have been perfect for it. I mean, there was just something about the sense of it. I thought he could have done that, and he should have.
Yes, the Bob Hope house is large enough to be a small terminal for an airport.
Oh, yeah.
Clearly.
Except it's up on a mountainside.
And you would always know where you were. That's one of the things that I complain about within an airport. I never know where I am because any end of it looks like any other end.
Right. They're kind of generic.
But that was never the case with the John Lautner building. You always know where you are.
Thinking about that, that really is a great point because he would have been perfect to make an international airport somewhere.
Yes.
Do you know if he ever tried to bid for one of those?
He may have, but he entered a lot of competitions, but after a while he discovered that they were not ready for his radical approach to architecture because they liked everything buttoned down.
Yeah, they didn't want any horseshoe crabs for airports.
Oh, no, nothing like that. And so when he entered the competition for the Sydney Opera House, he decided he would tone it down this one time.
Oh.
And it was such a shame because that's the time he really could have won. And because the one they did choose was pretty damn wild. And they didn't care at the time that it was going to cost them many years and who knows how many bucks to build. And he could have done that one. But instead, he submitted a design that was much more conservative than he usually would.
Is there a photo somewhere of his design for the Opera House?
Oh, I don't know if there's, if there's obviously the plans.
Yeah.
at the Getty, yes.
That would be fascinating to see what he would have come up with for that, because that was such an important international commission. Saarinen was on the jury for that.
It's such a shame. I really wish he had done what he wanted to do.
Judith, my last question is this. What do you attribute the constant rise of popularity about your dad's work? It's just every year more and more people are discovering this and just going crazy about it.
That's a hard one to answer, and I know it's true, and I think there's something it's unimitatable, for one. Nobody else can do what he did. He was, and I'm speaking not only as his daughter, but as just an observer, he had such a grasp of three-dimensional thinking. He could see things in 3 dimensions in his mind. And I just don't know anybody else who has that kind of vision. So he could feel how space would feel, even though it had never been built. And that's the thing. Not only do his buildings look beautiful, but they feel so good inside. And I think that's something that attracts a lot of people, that when you go in there, there's nothing that photography and even motion pictures can really do to describe how it feels to be inside one of these buildings.
That is very true. I've been in the Sheets Goldstein house in Los Angeles several times, which is very frequently photographed. But the experience of going through it is just like, wow, like, holy cow, this is one hell of a house.
And, that reminds me, too, another aspect of his design was the risk-taking. That not only did he take the risk in the design, but the owners had to take some risks. That even you look at the Wallstrom house or any number, there are places in these homes that you could say are dangerous.
Oh, sure.
But of course, because it's a house, people get to know their houses and they don't get hurt. They know how to get around there. But that sense of danger is part of the beauty of it.
Yeah, when you're at a residence that was built by Lautner or others, and there's not the standard OSHA-required railing system and doors open out into things, you're just a little more careful, right? Yeah,
you are. Naturally, you are, yes. Obviously, if it's a public building, you have to take a lot more caution. But I'm sure that even then that could, like I said, the Hope House gave me that sense that it could be an airport.
What was your dad's most recognized commercial building?
Well, he didn't do very many, as you know, and the Desert Hot Springs Motel might be the best known.
In Palms, we've been there many times.
Oh, the Lautner compound.
Yes.
I've been there. I got the T-shirt.
I bet you did, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a beautiful facility. Frank Gehry stayed there for his honeymoon.
Oh, did he? I didn't know that.
He sure did.
Funny.
Well, Judith, thank you so much. This has been fun to get to know you and hear some of this history. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
You can see U.S. Modernist archive of Lautner's houses, including a map of all his residential projects worldwide, at usmodernist.org/Lautner. Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Modernist realtor Angela Roll. Okay, Tom, take us out.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 12,000 significant modernist houses, and access 4 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song is performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl. Rogue archivist Carrie Cesarino researches guests while simultaneously juggling 2 kids, her husband's electrical business, updating the U.S. Modernist website, and most importantly, taste testing various coffee stouts. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild. George and I will be back soon with another organic, wildly imaginative, architecturally curvaceous, slightly dangerous edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.